Have you ever heard the story of two brothers, abandoned as babies and raised by a she-wolf? This isn't just a fairy tale, it's the legendary beginning of one of the greatest civilizations in history, Rome. According to legend, these twins, Romulus and Remus, founded a city on 7 hills in 753 BC after a fierce quarrel. Romulus killed Remus and became the first king, naming the city after himself. From these mythical, violent beginnings, an empire was born that would shape the Western world for centuries. But Rome wasn't always an empire. For nearly 500 years, it was a republic, a revolutionary idea where citizens elected their leaders. At the heart of this republic was a senate, a powerful body of aristocrats who guided the state's destiny. The symbol of this era was SPQR, Senatus Populasque Romanes, meaning the Senate and People of Rome. This wasn't just a motto, it was a declaration of a new kind of power, one that belonged, at least in theory, to the people. The early republic was a time of constant struggle, not just for political power within the city, but for survival against its neighbors. The Roman legion, a disciplined and innovative fighting force, became the engine of expansion. Legionaries weren't just soldiers. They were engineers, builders, and citizens. Their iconic rectangular shields, the scutum, and short-stabbing swords, the gladius, were feared across the ancient world. Through relentless warfare, Rome conquered the Italian peninsula, setting the stage for a much larger conflict. The greatest challenge to Roman dominance came from across the sea, from the powerful city of Carthage, in modern-day Tunisia. The struggle between these two superpowers is known as the Punic Wars, a series of 3 brutal conflicts that spanned over a century. The most famous figure from these wars was not a Roman, but the Carthaginian general, Hannibal Barca. In a daring move, he marched an army, complete with war elephants, across the Alps to attack Rome on its own soil. 4 years, Hannibal terrorized Italy, inflicting devastating defeats on the Romans, most famously at the Battle of Cannae. But Rome's resilience was its greatest weapon. They refused to surrender. Instead, they took the fight to Carthage, forcing Hannibal to return home, where he was finally defeated by Scipio Africanus at the Battle of Zama. With Carthage destroyed, Rome was the undisputed master of the Mediterranean, a sea they would come to call Mare Nostrum, our sea. The Republic's expansion brought immense wealth and power, but it also sowed the seeds of its own destruction. The vast territories were difficult to govern, and the wealth flowed into the hands of a select few, creating a massive gap between the super-rich and the impoverished masses. Generals who commanded loyal armies far from home began to wield more power than the Senate in Rome. This tension exploded into a series of civil wars. Into this chaos stepped one of history's most iconic figures, Gaius Julius Caesar, a brilliant general, a charismatic politician, and a gifted writer. Caesar conquered Gaul modern day France Adin, vaste territories, to Roman control. His military successes made him immensely popular with the people, but feared by his rivals in the Senate. When the Senate ordered him to disband his army, Caesar made a fateful decision. He crossed the Rubicon River, a small stream marking the border of Italy, an act of open rebellion. The phrase crossing the Rubicon still means passing a point of no return. Caesar's actions plunged Rome into another civil war, from which he emerged as the victor. He was declared dictator for life, and he began a series of reforms to address Rome's problems. But his ambition and power were seen as a threat to the Republic itself. On the Ides of March 44 BC, a group of senators, crying, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always true Taransis, assassinated Caesar at the foot of a statue of his former rival, Pompey. They believed they were saving the Republic. In reality, they had just sealed its fate. Caesar's death didn't restore the Republic. It unleashed another bloody power struggle. Out of the chaos, 2 key figures emerged: Caesar's loyal general, Mark Antony, and his young, cunning, grandnephew and adopted heir, Octavian. At first, they were allies, hunting down Caesar's assassins and dividing the Roman world between them. Antony took the wealthy east, forming a famous alliance and romance with the Egyptian queen, Cleopatra. Octavian controlled the west. But their alliance was fragile. Octavian, a master of propaganda, painted Antony as a puppet of a foreign queen, turning Roman sentiment against him. The final showdown came at the naval battle of Actium. In 31 BC, Octavian's fleet crushed the forces of Antony and Cleopatra. The lovers fled to Egypt, where they eventually took their own lives, ending the last dynasty of the pharaohs and making Egypt a Roman province. With all his rivals gone, Octavian stood alone, the sole ruler of the Roman world. But he was careful not to make Caesar's mistake. He knew Romans were wary of kings, so he masterfully created a new political order. He publicly restored the Republic while secretly keeping all the real power for himself. The Senate bestowed upon him the title Augustus, meaning the revered one, and Princeps, or first citizen. Historians mark this moment as the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. The age of Augustus ushered in a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity that would last for 2 centuries. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace. During the Pax Romana, the empire reached its greatest extent. From the misty frontiers of Britain to the deserts of Mesopotamia, from the Rhine River in Germany to the sands of the Sahara, all were under Roman rule. A vast network of stone-paved roads connected the empire, allowing legions, goods, and ideas to move with incredible speed. Aqueducts, marvels of engineering, brought fresh water to bustling cities with populations of over 1 million people. Grand structures like the Colosseum in Rome hosted spectacular, and often brutal, public games. Latin became the language of government and culture, and Roman law provided a unified legal framework for tens of millions of people. It was an era of stability and cultural achievement that left an indelible mark on the world. But no empire lasts forever. By the 3rd century AD, the cracks began to show. The empire became too large to govern effectively from a single capital. The constant need for new soldiers and a bloated bureaucracy led to crippling taxes and economic instability. The peaceful succession of emperors broke down, leading to a period known as the crisis of the 3rd century, where dozens of emperors, mostly generals, were proclaimed and then quickly assassinated. The empire was tearing itself apart from within. At the same time, external threats were growing. Along the northern frontiers, groups the Romans called barbarians, tribes like the Goths, Vandals, and Franks began to press against the borders, raiding and migrating into Roman territory. For centuries, the legions had held them back, but now, weakened by civil wars and economic turmoil, the borders began to buckle. Emperor Diocletian tried to solve the crisis by splitting the empire into 2 halves, an eastern and a western part, each with its own emperor, to make it more manageable. Later, Emperor Constantine would move the capital of the entire empire to a new city he built, Constantinople, in the more stable and prosperous east. He was also the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, a faith that had grown from a small sect to a major force within the empire, fundamentally changing its culture. The Western Roman Empire, however, continued its slow, painful decline. The internal problems never went away, and the pressure from migrating tribes intensified. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The city of Rome itself was sacked by the Visigoths under their king Alaric. It was the first time in 800 years that a foreign army had entered the city. While the empire would limp on for a few more decades, the blow was devastating, both practically and psychologically. The final nail in the coffin came in for 76 AD, when the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. Odoacer didn't bother to name a successor. He simply sent the imperial insignia to the Eastern Emperor in Constantinople, signaling that the Western Roman Empire was no more. The fall of Rome wasn't a single event, but a long, complex process. It was a combination of political corruption, economic collapse, social decay, and overwhelming external pressures. But while the political entity of the Western Empire disappeared, its legacy endured. The Roman language, Latin, evolved into modern languages like French, Spanish, and Italian. Roman law forms the basis of many legal systems today. Roman engineering, architecture, and ideas about government and citizenship have echoed through the ages, shaping the very foundations of Western civilization. The story of Rome, from its mythical founding by a wolf-raised boy to its eventual fall, remains one of the most compelling and influential sagas in human history. Thanks for watching our journey through ancient Rome. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from our past. Let us know in the comments which civilization you'd like us to explore next.